Hi, and welcome to the next webinar in our Plantae webinar series. My name is Jason Padilla, and I'm your technical host for today's webinar. Next slide, please. This webinar is brought to you today by Plantae, the open online community for plant scientists powered by the American Society of Plant Biologists. I would like to give a special thank you to all our ASPB members who are attending today. Your ASPB membership dues help make this webinar possible. For any of you who have not yet joined ASPB, you can join today using the discount code %10 to receive a 10% discount on your membership registration. You can learn more about ASPB and all the opportunities we provide at aspb.org. Next slide, please. This webinar, and we have plenty of them already that are available for you to kind of watch on our YouTube channel. And so this webinar will be made available once the recording is ready, and you can find them all on our Plantae YouTube channel. So if you haven't already, make sure you check that out. Next slide, please. Before we get started, I'd like to go over some housekeeping items to make sure that you get the most of your attendance in today's webinar. If you are experiencing technical issues, please let me know about those using the Q&A box, or you can email me at jpadilla@aspb.org. If you have questions for our guest speakers, please add them in the Zoom Q&A section. You should be able to see the Q&A box. And so along the way, as you think of questions, drop them there. Our moderator will be sharing them with our speakers during the Q&A section of this webinar. If you have trouble connecting or need to leave early, as I mentioned, this webinar is being recorded and you'll be able to watch them on our YouTube channel once the recording is ready. And also, if you have colleagues that are not able to come and you think would benefit from the content of this webinar, feel free to share the link of the YouTube recording. And so again, to make sure that you take advantage of all our webinar, be sure to follow our Plantae webinar YouTube channel so you could stay up to date on all new Plantae content. And so without further ado, I am now going to turn it over to our moderators, who are our Plantae fellows and editor, who will facilitate today's session. So take it away, Plantae fellows and editor.
Hello, everyone. Am I audible, Jason?
We can hear you perfectly.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on fledgling seasons, sound advice for early career researchers starting out in academia. The webinar outline is as such. We are going to first start off with our speakers' introductions, followed by the moderators' introductions. Then we'll have our speakers' talks. First, we'll have Dr. Judolson, and then followed by Dr. Raju, which is followed by a Q&A session. You can put in your questions on the chat box for us to put the questions to the respective speakers. Next, please. So we are very pleased to have with us today Professor Howard Judolson, who is a professor with the Department of Microbiology and Plant Pathology at the University of California, Riverside campus, and Dr. Sunil Kumar Raju, who is an assistant professor with the Department of Botany and Plant Sciences, again from University of California, Riverside. Before going into the speakers' talks, previous slide, please. Yeah, so while organizing this webinar, we were keen, actually, the purpose of this webinar was to know the hiring process, especially as we know from the topic, especially in the US. And it was kept, we wanted to keep two perspectives in our mind. So we have our speakers, who is a senior professor, one of our speakers, a senior professor, who has been chair of various search committees. And we have Dr. Raju, who is a newly recruited PI, who could guide us onto his journey of job hunt. So basically, the webinar was for us as ECRs to know the do's and don'ts of the application process. So with that in mind, we are very pleased to have them, and we are pleased that they are both from UC Riverside, who is known which university is known to be one of the leading universities in education and research. Next. Next slide. So today I'm joined by Nathaniel Oregon, who is a doctoral researcher with Cluster of Excellence on Plant Sciences, Samples in Germany. And I'm Indrani, who's a current Plantae editor and was an ex-USDARS postdoc alum. Unfortunately, one of our moderators who couldn't be here today is Dr. Malini Karpagam. She has a family emergency. So me and Nathaniel are going to moderate this webinar for you. Next, please. So without taking much time, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Professor Howard S. Judelson. As I had mentioned, he's with the Department of Microbiology and Plant Pathology at UC Riverside. He has his PhD from University of Wisconsin in molecular biology. And Professor Judelson is actually well recognized for his contribution towards understanding the basic biology and evolution of oomycete pathogens like Phytophthora infestans. He's been known to have extensive mentorship guidance to graduate students and postdoc students, and he's also been a former department chair. With that, I would like to request Professor Judelson to please start his talk. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you to the organizers for inviting me to share my thoughts on this topic, which you know is giving advice to postdocs who are seeking jobs mostly in faculty or equivalent positions in government institutes where they might be a group leader or perhaps in a company, although most of my focus will be on these more academic type of jobs. Okay, next slide. Okay, before I get into that, I do want to point out that there's more people looking for faculty positions than there are faculty positions. And you shouldn't feel second rate if you end up in a different type of positions. So I wanted to show as my first slide, the types of positions that previous members of my laboratory have moved into. Some are faculty in research universities or government institutions. Others are teaching, and then others have doing a range of things, both in science, hands-on science, and doing administration in science, for example, being a program director at NIH. So you should always have, even though you may be interested primarily in a faculty position, keep an open mind. And most of you who have PhD degrees, I like to remind people that this is a doctor of philosophy. So you're developing analytical and critical thinking skills that could be applied to many types of positions, not just faculty positions. Okay, next slide. Okay, so when do you start looking for a faculty position? Well, to answer that, I thought I wanted to show this timeline of how a typical search goes, at least in the United States. Postings usually for jobs usually become publicized sometime in the fall, or hopefully in the middle of the fall. And the application deadlines will range usually from November to late December, sometimes in January. In some cases, there'll be Zoom interviews, so that might take a month to go through those. And this is typical when you have a lot of applicants for a position and the search committee wants to pare down the numbers of people that they'll interview on campus. And then in maybe early February, you'll start with on-campus interviews. Depending on the position, you may have anywhere between 3 to 5 candidates. And then hopefully you'd get a job offer soon afterwards. There'll be a period of negotiations, which could be a month or more. And then if you're offered the position, you usually could start in July, although often faculty won't start until September or sometimes January of the next year. Next slide, please. Okay, so what I'm going to be focusing on, because we have limited time, is the application process. Okay, so one thing that you need to think of is the timing of your postdoc relative to the schedule that's shown here, particularly publications. Publications are probably the most important in your application, and you want to ask yourself, when will you have publications from your postdoc? So if you're doing like a typical 3-year postdoc, you should really plan on having manuscripts submitted early in your 3rd year. So hopefully when you start applying on your curriculum vitae, you'll be able to list publications on in your record. And I'll talk more about that later. But before I go on, I want to say it's not absolutely necessary to have publications from your postdoc when you start applying for faculty positions. I've known of people with just a very good publication record from their PhD, but certainly publications from your postdoc will make you much more competitive. Okay, next slide. Okay, so how do you decide what jobs to apply for? You'll learn about what's available through online posts or advertisements. Networking, you may learn about positions. If you attend conferences, often there's a bulletin board in conferences or a website associated with the conference where people are advertising or doing like a preliminary advertisement for their openings. So when you look at these, you shouldn't be too narrow. First, you shouldn't self-reject. If you see a job that you think is attractive to you, don't be afraid to apply to it. Maybe you won't be perfect for the job as advertised, but don't assume that you would not get it. You should also not be too picky. You might have a favorite part of the world where you want to spend the rest of your life as a faculty member or an equivalent job, but jobs in a given state or region of the world might not appear every year. So don't be too picky. Also, don't be afraid to apply often. It's not unusual to apply 20 or more times until you get an interview. This is highly discipline specific. Some positions there'll be more than 100 applications. Some there may only be 30. So there's a lot of competition. And don't be afraid of applying even if you think you get rejected, because even going through the process of preparing an application will help you in the future. I'll be talking about the components of a typical application, such as a cover letter, a curriculum vitae, your references, research and teaching statements. It takes time to put these together. And if you get rejected from that first job or not selected for an interview, at least you'll have spent the time to get your materials together. And it takes time to really prepare these materials well. And all of these need to be very carefully and meticulously prepared, because you're going to be judged in a large part based on how your application looks. So you don't want to have like typographical errors in your CV. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the two things that are probably most important in your application would be the curriculum vitae, followed probably by the cover letter. This is what search committees will typically look at first. So for your CV, this is meant to be a complete summary of all your achievements that are related to science, your education, your publications, any awards or fellowships that you've received, presentations that you've given, meetings you've attended, any teaching you've done, as well as your research experience, professional service, contact information, and references. So there's no page limit to this. So put in everything that you think is relevant and will make you look good. And as I mentioned earlier, the publications are really the most important part. So they should come relatively early in the pages. If you have submitted manuscripts, it's okay to list those, but you might or probably want to avoid listing manuscripts in preparation. Perhaps if you have one thing that's listed as manuscripts in preparation, that's okay. But I've seen applications where there are 6 manuscripts in preparation listed, and this is not so credible. So if you have work that you've done that you think is close to publication, maybe it's better to put that in your research statement than in your CV. And then the cover letter, this is usually a shorter document, maybe 1.5 pages long. Here you're going to summarize your achievements and goals, some of which will be in your CV, but you also have space to say things like, why do you think you're the best candidate for the position? Why you're interested in the position. Uh, Anything you say here is a little more personal than the CV, but it sort of helps glue together material points that you might be making elsewhere in your application. Okay, next slide. Okay, so publications. Yeah, publications, publications, publications. This is the most important factor when applying for a faculty position. And as I said earlier, ideally, you'll have publications from your PhD and from your postdoc. And the idea here is it's showing that you have a record of continuous productivity. Depending on where you're applying, you really want to have a lot of first author papers. Co-authored papers are fine, but having first author papers are really essential, especially for those top research institutions. However, you don't need publications in what I'll call glamour journals like Nature or Science or Plant Cell. As long as you've published in a well-regarded journal within your discipline, that's fine. And I've said generally first or second quartile. I don't want to put too much weight on impact factors, but many people do. As long as it's a respected journal, I think that will be adequate. And that's because search committees want to see continuous productivity through your scientific career. If you just have one paper in the so-called glamour publication, well, that might be nice, but it's not really a track record. You want to have a few papers at least. And another thing about these glamour publications is that, yeah, they might give you an edge. It's impressive to see those in a CV, but you also have to think about whether they'll be accepted in your time frame. So I earlier pointed out that you need to pace your publication frequency or rate along with when you're going to be applying for jobs. Some publications you'll be asked to do 6 months or a year of revisions, and that may not fit in your time frame. So sometimes your supervisor or your PI might be aiming for one of these very high-ranked publications, and and their timeline, well, they have their whole career. They may conflict with what your timeline is in terms of getting publications for your job. So you should like stand up or at least negotiate with your professor or supervisor to get those publications in the time frame that you need them. Okay, next slide. Okay, so after the CV, the research statement is very important. And the simple purpose is to describe your past achievements and your future plans, but there's also a hidden purpose. And that's to show if you have the scientific maturity to succeed and if you fit the needs of the position. So for example, your research statement is sort of similar to a small grant proposal with fewer details. And they want to see, can you write something well enough with good ideas that will allow you to have success in funding in your career? So there'll be a mixture of your past work and your future goals. Usually, it depends how many years you've been as a postdoc or after your PhD. Future goals usually would be something like a 5-year plan. And in that, you want to make clear what your short-term goals are and what your long-term goals are. And, what are you doing? What is the big things that you're trying to figure out? What is the impact of your research? And when you do this, you want to include specifics. You don't have to go through all the detailed experimental ideas that will be in a traditional grant application, but you want to propose specific goals and methods and specific organisms. Sometimes I've seen applications where people are sort of vague. They'll say, oh, I'm going to study like flowering in a plant that's important in your state. As an example. Well, that's not very good. You should try to do some homework and figure out, what plant do you want to work on? what are the specific questions and the specific experiments that you're going to do? Okay, and that's what you need in your research statement. It's also useful to give ideas about where you're going to get funding. This is a sign of your scientific maturity. In some cases, you might want to refer to whether you're going to be competing with your advisor. Sometimes postdocs are proposing to do exactly what the lab they're coming from is, and sometimes there's questions, well, will this person be able to compete with this more established lab? Now, sometimes you've had the opportunity to have written grants or help write a grant, and you could also say that in your research statement when you're talking about your past research. Okay, next slide. Okay, so how do you format the research statement? Sometimes the university or the institution will give you a page limit, but typically they're usually about 3 pages of text. If you include pictures or figures, which I recommend, then they may go up to 4 to 5 pages. And as I said, this will be somehow divided between your past and your future work. What's really important is to make it easy to read. And one reason for that is committee members, particularly if there's lots of applications, might just skim through it. If you're selected for interview or for a shortlist, they'll look at it in detail. But if they have 100 applications, you want it to be easy and pleasant for them to read. And part of this is incorporating figures and images if you can. And also, just like a successful grant application, includes headings and subheadings and bulleted points. This makes it much more easily to be read. It has a clear organization. One comment is, be careful with artificial intelligence. Okay, I've seen research statements where it was clearly, I'll say, almost composed by artificial intelligence. Okay, I'm not saying you shouldn't use artificial intelligence to point out problems in your grammar, but be limited. I've read research proposals where it seems like some of the experiments were described by an AI tool, and that's not good. Okay. And then finally, get feedback from people. Show your research statement to people inside your discipline and outside your discipline. And they may give you ideas for improving it. And outside your specific discipline, which could mean outside your specific lab, is important because the search committee is going to be made of diverse people. It's unlikely that even more than one or two will be working in your specific field. So you want it to be understandable from a diversity of scientists. Okay, next slide. So if you're applying to a university, you'll also be required to have a teaching statement. And here you'll describe your experience in teaching, if any. And I should say you're not required to have teaching experience for a research university. If you're applying to a institution where teaching is the emphasis, then teaching experience would help. But describe your experience, your philosophy in teaching and mentoring, and what you plan to do in the future. And even if your focus is not on teaching, you should make your statement high quality, because this is sort of a writing test. In addition to seeing what you think about teaching, they want to see, can you write a quality essay? Are you taking this job or the task of the application seriously? I'm not going to speak about diversity statements, which some universities ask for, but it's the same idea there. Whatever you write should be high quality and not written by artificial intelligence. Some things you could do which show that you're serious about the job is check what classes are offered by the department. And maybe you could make comments about teaching an existing course or designing a new course. And as I said, teaching is important for teaching position, or teaching experience is important for a teaching position. But for research-focused jobs, your ability to teach is going to be judged mainly based on the seminar that you give. when you go for a job talk. Okay, next slide. Reference letters. So usually you'll be asked for 3. Sometimes you'll be provided with the opportunity of submitting up to 5, but 5 is not necessarily better than 3. 3 good letters are all you need. And one challenge for many postdocs, this is certainly a problem with me, or a challenge with me, is figuring out who's going to write those letters. Usually I'll ask your PhD advisor and your postdoc supervisor, but sometimes coming up with that third name could be a challenge because you're looking for someone who knows you scientifically and who would write a strong letter. Many people will ask a member of their PhD thesis committee, but they don't really know you very well, and their letters may not be very strong, but they might be. Maybe your lab is that you're doing a postdoc in is collaborating with another lab. Maybe you could get to know that collaborator. And ideally, these letters would come from faculty, so if it's a letter from a non-PI or non-professor, like another postdoc in your lab, sometimes you'll see those letters, but they do carry less weight. So ideally get a letter from a faculty member or some high-level research scientist. So once you find the names well, you should ask people for permission. Can you list them as a referee? And stay in touch with them. So if you haven't spoken to these people for a year or 2 years or 3 years, you're maybe not going to get a very strong letter. So, talk to them. If they're on your campus, visit with them, send an email every now and then, say you're starting to apply for letters. You could ask them for advice for applying. So, try not to get letters from strangers. The last point on this slide is, how can you be sure that they actually send in the letter? It's okay to remind them. And there is, I suppose, some value to providing more than 3 letters if you have that opportunity. Sometimes someone might be late getting in the letter. And if you ask 4 people, then maybe there'll be 3 letters in there on time. Depending on the search, some searches will proceed if they don't get 3 letters. Others won't consider you if there's less than 3 letters in the file at the time that the search committee is applying. So it's okay to remind your referee to send in the letter. Okay, next slide. Okay, so what do you do after you send in the application? Well, right after you send in the application, you should start working on a seminar. And this is because you may only have 2 weeks notice if you get an interview. And you don't want to say, oh, I'm not ready. I need a month to get ready. You want to be ready, we'll say, within 2 weeks after they contact you. The timeline from sending in the application to being contacted is variable. It could take a month or more. Depending on the university, sometimes the department will have to vote on the short list, then the dean will have to approve the short list, then your academic personnel office has to approve the short list. So sometimes this could stretch on for a while, so just be patient. Sometimes I've been asked, is it okay to contact the search committee or at least the chair of the search committee? And it's okay, but be polite and tactful. You could ask them about the timeline, like when do you think the shortlist will be determined. This perhaps is good because it puts your name in their mind. But don't be a pest. Don't email every faculty member in the department or every member of the search committee. It might be more useful if you did want to contact faculty in the department to do that before you send in the application. And you could ask them for information about the job or the department. But again, you don't have to email every faculty member, and it's probably not necessary. So I think that's the end of my formal slides. I will make some comments about what would happen if you're a postdoc and your funding runs out and you don't have a faculty position. Maybe there'll be a gap of a year before when your postdoc ends and when those job ads might start appearing. So this is unfortunately in the United States something that's going to be happening more frequently, I think. What my advice would be to try to stay active in science, try to avoid having like a hole in your CV. You could get some other job related to science, do some science mentoring. You could get a job in a company or some other entity, a nonprofit, and then apply later on for a faculty position. Just stay active and avoid having this gap in your CV. So yeah, so that's all I'll say now, and I'll look forward to hearing some questions later on. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Judison, for your talk. It was really, really insightful. Thank you once again. Now, we'll be moving on to our next speaker, which is Sunil. And Dr. Sunil is currently an assistant professor at the Department of Botany and Plant Sciences at UC Riverside. His current research is on the evolution of environmental responsive gene regulation in crops and wild relatives, where he uses comparative cell type specific gene expression and co-expression to expand gene function understanding. And also is the founder of Plant Grants and Plant Postdoc Community, which is focusing on resources and mentoring for early career plant scientists. So Dr. Sunil, we have our attention.
Okay, can I share my slides?
Yeah, sure. Perfect.
Okay, so thank you, Nathaniel, for the introduction. And thanks for the organizers for inviting me to talk about this journey that I took from a postdoc to a PI. So I want to talk today about how we can make this journey more intentional. So before that, I just wanted to introduce about myself. So I'm from South India, and this is just 2 miles from my hometown. So this is where I grew up. And as you can see, this is the part of the region where the Western Ghats is present, which is one of the biodiversity hotspots in the world. So that obviously made me more interested in crops and and the diversity of plants. So from India, I came to University of Nebraska Lincoln for my PhD, and then I did a postdoc in Michigan State University, and then I did my second postdoc, a short one at New York University, and then finally last year in October, I joined University of California, Riverside as an assistant professor in the botany and plant sciences. So I just want to talk about how can we make this transitions more intentional. So there are some things that I did that I thought were helpful for me, and then there are other things that I wish I had done to make these transitions more intentional. So from grad school to postdoc. So in Nebraska, I was working on trying to understand how epigenetics is important for crop improvement. And through this time, I was realizing the importance of comparative studies. And then for my postdoc, I wanted to leverage this comparative epigenomics so I can expand on the epigenetic part of my interest. So the idea is that when you're choosing your postdoc, you have to think about the scientific fit. What other skills do you want to build? And also think about what kind of mentorship you want in your postdoc lab. So there were many challenges. So moving institutions or fields, this can be a challenge. Adjusting to a new lab or a culture, that is a challenge. And then also as international students and postdocs, we have challenges with visa and other issues. So we have to overcome these as scientists, particularly as immigrant scientists. But then I just want to point out what worked well for me in this transition. So one of the things is that Michigan State at that time was hiring a lot of young new PIs. So that helped me in trying to talk to them and see how they start their lab. So my PI, Chad Niederhood, also started his lab right when I joined his lab. So it was good to see how a new PI sets his lab up, how he thinks about research project, how he uses his startup. So that was a good learning experience for me to see how I can start my own lab by leveraging some of the things that Chad did really well. And also finding mentors beyond just my PI, that was helpful because there was a lot of new PIs and a lot of senior faculty who are trying to mentor postdocs and PIs in Michigan State University. And the second thing that I think that helped me was also setting the scope of my project that aligns with my future research. So this is something, if you are already thinking about position in academia as a graduate student, when you're thinking about your postdoc, be very mindful about what projects you're taking on in that postdoc lab. Can you align that with what you want to do in your future? So if you already have ideas, it's good to talk to your mentor and say, so these are some of the things that I want to focus on for my future. And then along with the research that you're doing in in the postdoc lab, can you also build some material and resources to be able to jumpstart your research when you have your own independent position? And then I think one of the most important things is we should be intentional in building networks, not just skills. So science will take you far in your application process, but also networks become much more important. So go and give talks in conferences, network with your peers within the university, and talk to other departments. And so you can do a lot of these things to be visible in the community, and that will help you in your job application as well. So some of the things that I thought would be a good advice to postdocs who are just starting out now is that, like I mentioned, if you identify some gaps in your training from your grad school, do you want to learn a new technique, or do you want to develop a new model system? Do you want to gain more experience in leadership? Do you want to have specific type of publications? Then look for labs that can help you with those gaps in your training, and then be thinking about your research niche. So be proactive about independence and how you develop your own research area. So this has to start early. You cannot start working on a project and then think that you can create a niche. People can do that, but if you're already thinking about this, so then it helps what aspect of the postdoc work that you're doing can be taken as yours later. Talk to your advisor and think about that from early on so that you can frame your research in such a way that you can also take parts of it. And I think a lot of people think about research and what expertise they want to develop, but also thinking about what kind of mentorship helps you and fits is very important. So as you come in as a graduate student, maybe you don't have as much experience of seeing different types of labs, how different labs work. But during your grad school, you would have seen other labs, and then think about what mentoring style are you more comfortable with? What mentoring style aligns with your needs? And with these can help you when you are choosing your postdoc lab. So don't just worry about scientific overlap. Think also about the mentoring style. Does that fit well with how you work? And communicate your career goals early with your mentor, and make sure your ambitions align well. I think this is one thing that people usually don't think of too much. Is the lab that you're trying to get into, have they is the PI more open to having postdocs take academic jobs, or are they producing a lot of postdocs that are going to industry or government jobs? So try to see what kind of outcomes have come from the lab, and then talk to the PI and make sure that if your goal is to get into academia, are they supportive of that? If your goal is to get into industry or government jobs, are they okay with that? Does the mentoring align with your ambitions? So think about those aspects and talk to your mentor, and also talk to lab members about these aspects. And like I mentioned, the environment in the lab is very important. So consider the lab culture and the track record of the PI, and also the support within the department. So one thing that I mentioned is being in Michigan State University, which is one of the larger plant biology schools. It was very helpful because there was a big cohort of postdocs, so we could get together and talk about application process. So think about all these support that you can get for your job applications. And then, as I mentioned, networking is very important. So select a place where you can expand your scientific network. Can you get new collaborators? Can you get exposure to different types of institutions, whether it's research institution or a university? So think about how you can expand your network and also seek collaborations within the university and also within the broader community, such as ASPB or with other scientific societies. You can try to expand your network and collaborations that way. So one other aspect that I think is important is, again, thinking about the time that we are spending as a postdoc and how we can use it to our advantage. So one of the things, again, this seems like it's something that overlaps with my previous slide. It's to think about how can you create your own unique research identity. So I think Howard mentioned about this. In job application, one of the important things that the search committee looks for is how are you distinguishing yourself from your postdoc advisor and PhD supervisor. So this is very important. So can you think about your research identity that is different from your mentors? And for that, the other aspect that helps is seeking multiple mentors. So you have your postdoc advisor, but can you also find other mentors who can help you with your research or grant writing, and some can help you with your network or career development. So try to create a cohort of mentors who can help you, because one person cannot do everything. So talk to a mentor who can help you with writing grants, and someone else might be really good at networking. So can you leverage that for your benefit? So try to seek multiple mentors in that case. And some of the advices that I've got is you have to think about trying to show your depth with a signature project, but then you also have to show that you are open to collaboration. You can work with others, whether it's within the lab or beyond the lab. So try to develop both and have a balance between your important projects that you are driving solely, but also others where you collaborate with others and maybe get a co-author publication from those kind of work. And as I mentioned, you have to establish your independence and show creativity. For that, you can maybe apply for fellowships or grants. And as international students and postdocs, we don't have so many opportunities to write for postdoc fellowships, but we can definitely help writing grants with our PI. And usually PIs are very open to that. And they will write in your reference letter that this grant was written by you, and that will help you in your job application, even though you cannot be a PI or a co-PI on those grants. But definitely that experience of writing grant with senior professors who have successfully gotten grants, that's always helpful, but also good on your application package. And I think the other thing to think about is don't just worry about your research, but also think about what other skills you can develop beyond your research. So mentor junior scientists in the lab, whether it's undergraduates or graduate students. So that will help you in improving your mentoring skills. And as I mentioned, you can give talks in the conferences or in the scientific societies. So that will help you with the visibility. And then you can also organize journal clubs or retreats, and then be involved within the community. One important thing that I try to tell most of my mentees is that whenever you are networking, network without an agenda. So don't think about, I want to go to this conference and talk to some people because I want to get a job. Go and network because you want to know about their science or how they do science. And then that always helps. So some of the best uh, times that I had is in our New York University Biology Ping Pong Club. So this was after our social club. We got together and played ping pong. But then I made so many good friends, and so many even faculty used to come to these events. So these helps in building this bond, and that doesn't have to be thinking about whether it will help you in your job search or publication, but just creating that community and network always helps in our development as a person. So, and then transitioning from postdoc to a PI. So it was good that Howard talked about this timeline of job application process. So I don't have to go through about those things in detail. So the important question that a lot of people face is, when are you ready to apply, right? So I think it depends on the timing, luck sometimes. When your dream job opens up, or if you think of a job that you really like, even if you're not prepared, I think you should just go ahead and apply to it. But then also, Howard was mentioning about the timing. the year your major postdoc paper is freshly out, that's the best time for you to apply. So if you have a paper early in the year, so that job season in the fall will be your best time because you have your paper freshly out. And then he also mentioned about some of the circumstances like running out of funding or other things can also factor in when you are ready to apply. And I won't go through in detail about what are the things that you need. Howard explained this really well. But I think most importantly, what is critical is that you have to know what the search committee is actually looking for. And this, I think, has been a challenge because a lot of people, a lot of labs or a lot of mentors tell you what the search committee is looking for. But then you might be in a place where there are not many um, mentors that can help you with these things, because it's not just the science, but how you prepare your application document becomes very important, because the search committee is going through hundreds of application and they need to see the things that are really important. So for this, as Howard again explained this clearly, there are things that go in a research statement that are critical. I won't talk about that, but just to create resources so that everyone knows what a good research statement looks like. I started this organization in 2019 called Plant Postdocs. So what we do is we want to provide resources for all the postdocs who are applying for jobs, particularly focusing on US jobs. So we have this academic job workshop series. And as you can see from this, we start talking about, we have webinars on each aspect of the application process. So we start with the CV, the cover letter, research statement, teaching and diversity statement. And after you apply and you might be invited for a Zoom interview or for a in-person interview. So then how do you prepare your research and chalk talk? So we had people come and talk to us about these aspects. So we have this academic workshop series, but not just that, we also had some webinars where we invited the head of search committees from recent faculty applications in top universities in the US. And then they talked about what they actually looked for in each of these applications. And all these webinars that we have through Plant Postdocs are on our YouTube channel. So here is the QR code for our YouTube channel. So you can go through that. So along with these job application webinars, we also do a lot of career development workshops and webinars, and they're also on our YouTube channel. So you can look through them and see how you can leverage those resources to develop a better research statement or job application package. I think I'm running out of time, so I won't go through this. So this is something that we started in Plant Postdocs. We started thinking about the challenges, and then how can we create an impact, and what did we do to create that impact for early career researchers. So anyways, this will be shared later. So I will just want to end by thanking the people, especially because in my postdoc lab at NYU, the PI was intentional in creating an environment where everyone felt like collaborating and working together was such a fun thing to do. So I think creating this environment in a scientific lab, this is very important. And I learned a great deal of it from my postdoc advisor, Ken, and my colleagues at NYU. And I want to thank my co-founder of the Plant Postdocs, Arif Ashraf, and members of my lab. And with that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sunil, for your well-presented talk. It was really, really enlightening. Thank you so much. Now, I think we'll now be moving on to our question and answer session. Yeah. So I think we'll now be moving to the Q&A session. So I think we have a lot of questions. So I think the first question is, I think that goes to Professor Howard. Now, during your talk, you mentioned that we should include our publications on our application. So the question is, to the journal name, emphasis on the journal name. Should the journal name be indicated for submitted manuscript?
Yeah, I'd say yes if it's a good journal.
Okay. Is it saying something?
No, I'm done.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so for the second question, so for reference letters, so the question is, if, for example, someone has collaborated with someone outside the country For instance, in Europe, Australia, should I include them? Do the letters carry weight?
Yeah, definitely include them. It shows that you have a collaboration. Ideally, they'd have something equivalent to a professor or a group leader position. Sometimes in other countries, the person's title is hard to interpret by a search committee. But if the person is leading a lab, definitely include them. There's no discrimination against international letters. Okay, that's my answer.
Oh yeah, perfect. So should a research statement should it be written like a proposal or grant or more general style?
It's not required to write it as a grant, but I definitely would advise writing it in the same format as a grant, because that's what search committees are thinking about. Is this person going to be able to write a grant to bring funding to run his lab? So all the good characteristics of a grant, showing the hypothesis, the overall experimental goals, and the impact, those should be in a research statement too.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
And I just wanted to add to that. So because you have a space limitation, it's usually 3 pages or 5 pages. So you have to think about how do you write a very high level summary of that, because in a grant you have much more space. So you have to think about how do I write that in a concise way. And even again, related to a previous question, you should try to make it easier for the search committee to see. So even if we're talking about a collaborator from another another country where you might not know the position, but then just make it easy for them to see why you're collaborating with them, or what their role is. So that helps. So because it's condensed form in your research statement, make sure to make it as clear as possible for the search committee. Like you said, they're looking for 100 or 130 applications for each position. So the easier you make it for them, the better for them to read and evaluate your application.
And I'll add to that. So Sunil said about collaborators. Yeah, if you've identified a collaborator, put that in your application, in your research statement. That shows a level of scientific maturity that you're reaching out and establishing these collaborations.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so I think this next question goes to Sunil. I mean, given the fact that we're talking about collaboration, so the question is, can you give an example of how you started a collaboration as a postdoc and how you carried out research relationship into your lab as a PI?
Okay, so one of the examples that I can think of is I gave a talk in one of the ASPB conferences, and in that same session, another PI was giving a talk about their work. And I had so many questions about that work, and then we started talking during that time, and we realized that there was a clear collaboration there where I could use their data to answer some of the questions that we had in my research. So I established that collaboration, and we published a paper from that work during my postdoc. And then even now, I continue to work with that group, trying to answer some other questions. So I think most of the times when you are out in conferences talking about your work to others, that's where you get a chance to see whether there is a logical collaboration there that you can build. And then go back and talk to your postdoc advisor and see if they're willing to collaborate with that other group. So again, it depends on how much independence you have in your project, what kind of relationship you have with your advisor. That helps you in going ahead and forging more collaborations with others outside. But always you have to keep that communication channel open with your advisor, talk to them, and then see if they're okay with that, and then try to build that connection, and that will always be helpful.
I'll add to that, be open with your current advisor. You don't want them to think that you're going behind their back and setting up collaborations for projects, while your supervisor is paying your salary. So just be open.
Yeah, perfect. So I think another question for Sunil. I mean, for grant writing, if I contribute in the writing, should I ask my PI to include my name? If not, where should I mention it? CV or the cover letter?
Yeah, so I think some institutions have restrictions that postdocs cannot be PIs on the grant or even co-PIs, but some other institutions put the postdocs as research assistant professors, and then you can be PIs. So again, you have to talk to your advisor and also the your university and see what you can do. But even if they cannot put you as a PI, they can put you as a senior personnel. And even if that doesn't happen, they can write that in their recommendation letter saying that this grant, what was your contribution? So there are different levels, right? Maybe this was your idea, you wrote the entire grant and they put their name on it. That happens too, but they can write that. Or maybe they had the idea, you helped them write the grant. So the extent of your involvement, your PI can write that in their reference letter. So you want to show that you have done this. So you can highlight that, I think, in the cover letter as well, saying that I have experience of writing grant with my PI and we submitted, especially if it's a successful grant, then obviously you will put that on your CV or on your cover letter. But even if it's not the case, try to bring that up somewhere, either in the research statement or in the cover letter, that you have experience writing grants in the US funding system. This again goes back to letting the search committee know that you have this experience, you know what it takes to write a good grant.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Now, I think we have another question, and the question is, the question is about the perspective of the faculty search committee members, how they view a candidate whose PhD and postdoc is in the same lab, completed in the same lab. Will this affect the search committee's evaluation of the candidate?
This question is forwarded to Dr. Howard.
So that's a tough
It's a specific question. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Sorry to go.
traditionally we'd like to see someone acquiring diverse knowledge and skills. So normally it would be nice to see the person moving from one lab to another, but it doesn't really disqualify you. I've seen successful cases of people that have stayed in the same lab. I think 20 years ago, people would have said this is a terrible thing to do. You have to go to a new institution. But I think people are more lax on that issue right now. But having said that, I think moving to another lab is a great experience. You get to learn a different research project. You get to be in a different environment with a different mentor. And I could tell you the labs I worked in, they had very different mentoring styles, and I benefited from seeing that. So my style now is based on the best of what I've had before, and not the worst.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add that. So in those cases, if you think that there is something in your application that the search committee might look at negatively, or you want an explanation, I think cover letters is the place where you kind of explain why you stayed in that same lab. And in that case, there will also be another doubt that, okay, you did your PhD and postdoc in the same lab. Now you're trying to propose something. Will that overlap with what the lab is also doing, right? So you want to clarify all those things either in your cover letter or your research statement, that even though you did your PhD and postdoc in the same lab, the things that you're proposing to do will not compete with that lab, or you're taking parts of that are separate from what that lab will be pursuing in the future. So those kind of things you have to clarify. Even if you have a gap in employment, cover letter is a place where you mention why that happened. What is the reason for that? So that the search committee looks, because always search committee, when they're looking through your profile, if these things are present, they will pause a while. But if you have a reason for it, then they know, okay, this was the reason, and then they will move past it. But if they don't have it, they will start speculating things. You don't want them to do that. So I think explaining the reasons will be helpful in that case.
Thank you so much. So I think we can just have like one more question, and the question is, can you give an example of an application that was rejected immediately just as looking at the cover letter or the CV? I think any of you will be able to answer the question.
Well, I think if it was poorly written and sloppily written and had vague statements about their research plan, that is really a killer. That will lead to a rejection.
Yeah,
I mean, given that you mentioned that the search committee just like skimmed through in the very first phase, and
Yeah, I think as Howard was mentioning, when search committees look for the applications, they primarily look at the CV and the cover letter. So you have to write your cover letter in such a way that the search committee should get excited to read your research statement and other statements. And like you mentioned, if it's very sloppy and if it's not relevant to the job that is being applied for, then they're not excited. They will skim through the research statement, but they will not pay any attention. But if you attract them and say, okay, this is what I'm doing, this is how it will fit into this position, then they're really excited and they take the time to read the research statement in detail. So I think that's where a lot of applications may not go forward, is that they don't excite the search committee within their CV or within their cover letter.
Yeah, and I'll add to that that this means you have to take the time to customize your application for each position.
Yeah, perfect. So thank you, and I'll hand over to Indrani.
Yeah, thank you so much, Professor Judelson and Dr. Raju, for the insightful talks. We really came back wiser after attending this webinar, which is very much evident from all the queries that we had today. With this, I would like to end today's webinar, and we finished on time. Thank you again for your time and your patience, and we hope to see you all again in some other webinar maybe. And with this, I'll hand it over to Jason.
Thank you, everyone, again, for your participation. A big thank you to both our speakers who shared some insightful thoughts. Hopefully, for all our attendees, you found this session really helpful, and we hope that you share what you learned today with your colleagues, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. Have a great weekend, everyone, and I hope you all join the next webinar next month. Bye, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Wilson. Thank you, Dr. Raju.